All right, hi everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of 2018. And we have an excellent webinar to start of Dr. Patricia Solis, and I have asked her to please tell us about her background. And please, Patricia, if you could just take it over and tell us about your work.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the invitation to give this webinar today. And if you have some questions, if you would like to just put them in the chat, and I will address them at the very end. So I'm going to share my screen here and show you some about my work. And I'm going to talk about the YouthMappers program. And we like to say that we don't just build maps, but we build mappers as well. So I'll talk a little bit about those challenges and opportunities that we're finding as we're making our way through this open geospatial data revolution. But first, a little bit about myself. My name is Patricia Solis, and I am currently at Texas Tech University. I'm the Center for Geospatial Technology co-director, and I'm also a research associate professor of geography in our Department of Geosciences. That means that I spend a lot of time mostly doing research, but I do get to teach classes from time to time. Prior to that, I was at the Association of American Geographers for about 12 years and played various roles there, mostly doing a lot of international work and trying to see how we can use geography and geospatial technologies for strategic kinds of society needs. I did get my PhD in geography and my master's, all my graduate work is in geography, but I started off in physics and engineering. And so I kind of came through to geography through the remote sensing side. So I've always had this interest in how this is being used, especially in other places around the world. I have this little Panamanian flag on this slide because I married a Panamanian when I met him at the University of Iowa, and we ended up living in his home country in Panama for about 9 years. And that's sort of a personal experience, but has really impacted my work professionally. I have a lot of ties in Latin America, and I feel really passionate about that region in particular, and about it's sort of changed the way that I see my work. And it's one of the places where I also developed my passion for working with young people. So I think you'll see that when we talk about YouthMappers. Really, this is like any project, I think, starting from a problem or a challenge. And as I said, just looking around in many parts of the world, we see a lot of challenges, frankly. We see a lot of extreme poverty, vulnerability to environmental problems, to economic problems, food insecurities, a lot of health issues, and our population is growing. There's a lot of pressure on this. In fact, there are 1.8 billion young people, and 85% of them live in developing regions. So this is the kind of world that they're inheriting, and it's one of the challenges that interests us most. At the same time, as we're trying to address some of these challenges, as this audience might know well, we find that often there is a lack of data and information for us to be able to adequately understand and address those kinds of problems. We're, of course, very interested in that geospatial data. And in fact, many researchers in many fields are actually lamenting the fact that any advances that we can make on the idea of being resilient and addressing vulnerability, it's really being hampered by the access to reliable data. The UN actually identifies this as one of the biggest obstacles to progress towards the development goals. So this is the thing that is the context behind the establishment of YouthMappers. But within that challenge, we actually see a really important opportunity right now. As this audience knows very well, the geo-open revolution is really something that has sort of changed the way that we see data, and changed the way that we've seen these kinds of problems. So we wanted to put together that opportunity for using the open technology and engaging the crowd sort of this movement, as I like to call it, of open data producers, and specifically looking at the OpenStreetMap platform, which is really in heavy use by many practitioners and actors in the humanitarian community. The other opportunity is that very group of people that I mentioned, the young people of the world, and the fact that in many ways that they're very interested in organizing to address these very same problems. It's their world. So sort of one of the main ideas here is to actually engage students where they are with that open technology. And in many ways, the students at universities where we have our network, they are in a perfect position to be able to not only learn more about the technology, but learn more about the world and the problems. They have a very high motivation. So we organize on university campuses. We also do this in a way that is student-led, where we put the students at the center of this movement. Obviously, we give them a lot of support, but by organizing in groups and in chapters, we've designed into this program a very social kind of aspect where students can help each other. There's a lot of peer activity happening, and it sort of enables more students to help each other and get more involved. So the student-led chapters is really a fundamental, important design, I think, for this program. And then another very critical element is that we have the support of the humanitarian community. And that's really key because the data that we create already has an end user in mind. So YouthMappers is funded and supported right now by the USAID Geo Center. They helped co-create it with us, and they are the decision makers that sort of drive a lot of the kind of work that we focus on initially. Tying this whole thing together, that technology, the young people, and then the decision makers who really have a need for this data in the end is really kind of the fundamental core of how we came about with YouthMappers. And when I say we, I'm initially talking about those of us at Texas Tech University, West Virginia University, and George Washington University. Colleagues of mine, we were co-founders along with the USAID Geo Center. We launched this program we first started talking about the concept in 2014, and then we launched it on Capitol Hill in late 2015 during Geo Week. And since that time, immediately following, we decided to invite other colleagues around the world in universities to join us with this idea. We started our chapters on our own campus, worked with the model, and set up this network. Well, in 100 weeks, the last 100 weeks since we started inviting universities to join us, we have had 100 universities actually join the network. That's about one a week, and they're coming from 300 different countries. We estimate that about 5,000 mappers are involved in this network. It's always a little bit in flux with people coming and going. And over that time, we have worked very hard on OpenStreetMap and working in global and local kinds of ways to create data that is directly going to be used in the humanitarian and development world, but also for the students and faculty for their own work. So in the last couple of years, we have mapped more than 2.5 million buildings. In all, about 20 million edit changes to OpenStreetMap through this network. So what actually do we do? How do we organize the action that happens? This is a large sort of consortium. We actually create this communication around some of the featured projects around USAID, as I mentioned. Those priorities are determined by the Geo Center, and we set up the projects and get that sort of remote mass participation in creating open geospatial data. You've probably heard of mapathons. We also put people in competition with each other to create this, and that's sort of our featured project that we get everyone kind of working in collaboration together. I'll share an example of that with you in a moment. But we also have some synergistic efforts with partners. Obviously, this is all a part of a larger ecosystem, such as with Geo4All, of people interested in the public and the private and the academic sectors to use geospatial and open geospatial tools for humanitarian and development needs. So we work very closely with that community as well. We have been able, through the support from USAID, to fund some local capacity building activities, some very specific sites where we had some good connections, and I'll tell you about a couple of those and give you some examples about how we've directly supported some sort of seed activities with our chapters. And then we also have all sorts of ways that we support each individual chapter, just sort of depending on where they are. Some come to us with a lot of experience and a lot of activity under their belt, but others maybe are new and need some training and some other support. We always encourage our local chapters to identify local needs and ways they can help out on their own campus and their own communities, their own countries. And we try to find ways to help that. I'll give you a couple of examples of that as well. And then finally, because we are in the academic world, we're also very interested in researching how this is all unfolding and what is going on, and what else can be done other than just creating that data. How could that data be used? How could we study this whole process? And I'll go over some efforts that we have dealing with that aspect. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the featured projects, and this again is coming from the USAID Geo Center. In 2016, we had a very big campaign all year looking at malaria prevention. Now, this was one of the first times that on this massive scale that we were getting everyone involved in something that wasn't necessarily a natural disaster, something that happened, sort of a chronic problem such as malaria, which actually is addressed in many, many different countries. So, but we use the same tools that you've probably seen if you've done humanitarian mapping. The Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team Tasking Manager, and we use the imagery behind that Tasking Manager that comes from USAID's NextView license, so some very high resolution imagery, and also some direct donations from Digital Globe Foundation. So we manage these mini volunteers by using those same tools that the humanitarian community is using. Often what we're tasked with is mapping buildings and roads, because again, in many of these places, there's the fundamental geospatial data infrastructure is not present. And we can use that data to do all sorts of analytics on, such as the footprint of the building. You can understand how many walls perhaps that you need to spray in the malaria campaigns. How many roads do you need to travel? How much gas do you need to buy for how many people? So again, this was directly contributing to USAID's needs, and USAID is part of the President's Malaria Initiative, and they were requesting the data so that they could use it to do their planning and understanding about a spray campaign. So we were focused, at least initially, we did many more countries, but we were first initially focused in Mozambique and in Kenya. In Mozambique, it's a really serious problem. Many deaths occur directly related to malaria. And in Kenya, there's some populations that we were working in that were 100% at risk of malaria. But over the course of 5 months, we activated that network. We've called for buildings to be mapped. This is one of our sites. You can see the difference from before and after, where all the squares where buildings were mapped, in roads as well. There was no roads before, and then we mapped in many different locations. You can see the analytics tool there sort of showing up where the geographic data was placed onto these sites. In all, there were about 1,000 people who contributed to this particular project, and more than 2.5 million map changes made in that first 5 months. Now, with that data on OpenStreetMap, what happened to it afterwards is that the Peace Corps was in the field, and they helped validate that data so it could be used directly by the President's Malaria Initiative and other USAID implementing partners. So this was also obviously on the OpenStreetMap, which is open for everyone, and other organizations like the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Health Initiative could also use this data for other things like targeting households at highest risk, which they actually are doing. So we were very pleased when we heard from the President's Malaria Initiative that this really did make a difference. It impacted their work, and received these wonderful awards from the President's Malaria Initiative Director, Rear Admiral Ziemer, who said that it helped improve lives. This is just one example of many different campaigns that we have done. On our website, we have a story map of where these projects have taken place. You can go and you can see where we have been working. Obviously, there's a lot of projects in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, but also in Asia and Latin America. And you can read about each one of those and learn a little bit more about how we're working. For example, right now we're looking at flooding resilience with a World Bank project and mapping the flood risk downstream of hydropower dams that are at risk of failure. We've also mapped in the past at the request of the Office of Transition Initiatives at USAID to map areas in Colombia that were needing data in order to help implement the history-making peace accords there, because in order to comply with some of those tasks, the government needed to have good road data and building data, infrastructure data in these places where it didn't exist. Another example is working with Refugee Settlements. The State Department and MapGive has identified some areas in Uganda, and we actually happen to have 6 universities working in Uganda, and they've been a really wonderful group to collaborate with projects like this. So there's many, many more, but that's one way that we work around the world, is organizing the global campaigns that all of the chapters can contribute to in that remote way. We also have a large number of partners because, as I said, this is a ecosystem, community of communities, as I like to call it, where there's a lot of interest by many different organizations. So we do have some specific partners that we've designated where we found areas that we can work together. So, for example, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team has offered to recognize some of our chapters when they can have a special hot designation and receive some extra support from them when they have done a certain level of mapping and have worked with hot tasks. We also working with the American Geographical Society and their Geo Badges program, that we have a few badges that our youth mappers can collect. Mapillary has donated some toolkits for doing street view photos for a few of our chapters as well. As I said before, Digital Globe Foundation has actually also donated imagery, not just to be able to view the imagery, but the actual imagery for research when our chapters, our students and faculty have some need for that. And many, many more kinds of things that we work with our partners to sort of deliver that are specific to what the students' needs are. So the third area of work that I mentioned is local capacity building. And by this we mean that there are some places where there's a very strong need for local data, but it's not something that could always happen remotely. We need maybe attributes of that data, or we need more specifics or some local knowledge on that data. So we have worked in a number of places in Kenya, Bangladesh, Uganda, Colombia, Ghana, where there was a lot of potential with our students and connecting them directly to some of those data needs. I want to just tell about one part of this, although there's obviously a richer set of projects that have happened. But in engaging our youth, we really feel that the capacity of both female students and male students is really, really important. Women are not represented in the technology fields as much as men are, and they're disproportionately underrepresented. And so we have been focusing a lot on how we engage with our female mappers and our students. In Bangladesh, we actually have our very first all-women's university chapter, and they've been absolutely wonderful. And we also prominently listen to the voices of our female mappers. I really love this quote from Maliha, who's one of our fellows in Bangladesh, who says that envisioning the untraveled world through my mapping makes me feel like the global citizen that I am. Those of us who are educators and really believe in the citizen science part of open data, that's just lovely words to see that the students are really understanding and they're adopting that kind of empowerment. So we have a sort of a campaign under this local capacity building that we call Let Girls Map. And we are promoting that our university chapters and schools everywhere look around in their own communities and make sure that schools and clinics are mapped in their countries. Education and healthcare are really important gender-related issues, and in fact, girls' education is very highly correlated with development. And so these are kind of the issues that we're raising awareness of and having our chapters map. In addition, we've done some local work with particular issues of girls and women. And in Tanzania, for example, there is a group called the Tanzania Development Trust, who's a wonderful organization that works to help identify clinics and also safe houses for girls who are at risk of female genital mutilation. So with that data, they actually create these accessibility maps, and then they understand where additional services need to be placed in that region. So it's a wonderful data creation, but then also very applied research project that our students are getting involved in. Beyond that, we also see that just the act of becoming involved in this technology in my past work, we've been able to measure how this has improved the confidence in technology by our female participants and the male participants, of course, as well. But we found that there's no longer this gender gap after you've been able to participate in this kind of technology in an applied project. So we want to test and see what else we can do with this project in Let Girls Map. So the fourth category I mentioned to you is our chapter-led mapping, where our students identify themselves in their own locations, what they feel that they could use this technology for. And I want to give you just two quick examples. One, of course, is from my other adopted country, Panama. The students at the University of Panama have been working to map their own campus actually in very, very fine detail. Many of the sidewalks and the pathways on their campus are not well maintained or broken, or there's street lamps that are broken. Some accessibility issues, especially for those who may be with disabilities or are female students at night wanting to take night classes without good lighting. So they wanted to get a handle in a very detailed way on all of their infrastructure on campus. And we did a training, there we are, with the students, and they went all around campus and did a very detailed inventory of those kinds of resources, and are doing some kind of analysis on what their facilities are there for and what's missing and where. I do want to mention that they have some really important support from their university, and we really appreciate their rector for giving them that support. In South Africa, our students at the University of Pretoria have looked in their own community as well, and there is an informal settlement, basically a slum in the area that they are very interested in working with, because they don't have addresses, and it's really important to be able to address locations in order to provide services like even water and public services, and also just to register to vote. So this is something that our students there have taken on. They've done a lot of work. They've written about this in our blog, and they've also identified a lot of services in their community for mapping with that settlement. So there's many, many more student initiatives that we try to support them through helping create the task and getting some extra help with the mapping, if it can be done remotely through the network. The street level view tools, all those tools that I mentioned to you, the imagery if they need it. So we're really trying to help support them, but also giving them a voice. So if you haven't seen our blog, I really encourage you to go look at it. It's always inspires me a lot to read their voices and what their perspective is on, their participation in this open data, open geospatial world. It's pretty active, and because of that, we actually were recognized with one of the top 100 youth blogs on the internet. I'm sure that's because of all of our readers and our wonderful student writers. So finally, I do want to mention, since we are sort of an academic kind of network, that research, of course, is really important. What good is data if we don't learn something from it, and we can't share the results as well and the impact as well? So we have, through our co-founders, Texas Tech and West Virginia University and George Washington University, we've undertaken a few lines of research to try to help our students do more research, helping them fill in those gaps, not just the blank spots on the map, but the blind spots about what we can find out through the map. So we're linking them together. We are trying to leverage the graduate student theses and the dissertations, and also integrate that research into our own classrooms in sort of an applied way. So there also is a lot of research about how to teach this and how to incorporate this in your curriculum. George Washington University is actually one of the pioneers in this, and also one of the actors that helped create the website Teach OSN, which is a really great resource for bringing OpenStreetMap into the classroom. Of course, we also hold a lot of mapathons and eat a lot of pizza as a way to draw our students in, but they're very motivated by having the ability to use that data, and it's motivating to know that this data is going to be used in the humanitarian world, but that they can also use it too in their own work and their own research and their own career trajectories. So some of the things that we've been able to do with the support from USAID is we've had a number of what we call visiting open data scholars, where students from one country receive some support to go to another country to work with a chapter, maybe start a chapter, maybe collect data together. Here you see one of our Texas Tech students with the group in Indonesia, and we kind of create those in-person relationships so that they can do those work. So they went on a study trip and worked with these students. I love this picture because you can see the students are doing the Texas Tech signal in that picture there. So it's a really great camaraderie around their professional aspirations. We've also been able to do some scholarships. We had, in last May, we went to Nepal, and we had selected 20 fellows from all over the world, from Nicaragua, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. Wonderful, wonderful students who actually proposed some ideas about their role as leaders in this kind of movement. And so we spent about 10 days there working together and talking about leadership issues, doing a little bit of training and a little bit of community building. And this group, I can tell you, this is all of us there in Kathmandu. We were hosted by Kathmandu Living Labs, which was a wonderful experience. And to see their work and have that spawn this, I think, is really amazing. I will not be surprised a few years from now to see these names as leading researchers in open geospatial. Really wonderful group of people. So another kind of experience that we offer, now we can't always meet in person, that's really a rare treat, but for our students in the US and in Canada, we have a direct internship with the USAID Geo Center that they can virtually join. They don't have to travel to Washington, DC, but they can actually participate on their own campuses with the tasks and special tasks that Geo Center needs. For example, some work that we've done in Asia with volcanoes and dams. So this gives students a way not only to learn some additional technology skills, but also the skills of working sort of on a distributed team, working online and sort of being a part of a group that is virtual, which is really one of the things that I think we never teach them, but it's sort of a reality of the workforce today. So we also right now are reviewing the applications for research fellowships. We will select a small group of students who are proposing their own research with their faculty mentors to really create and really use OpenStreetMap data and open data in their dissertations or undergraduate theses. And I think we're going to have a really, judging from what we have received right now and looked at right now, we're going to have some really interesting topics and really amazing student-led research through these fellowships. So they will, after selection, they will come to the United States in June of this year, where they'll receive some training and, again, some research design, professional development, together with their mentors, the students and their mentors, and then they'll go and do their projects for the following 6 months or so. I mentioned to you that we are very interested in incorporating this into our classrooms and into the curriculum. And so we have been slowly compiling some resources for higher education and trying to do sort of a survey of how this is being used on campuses around the world. You might have seen our survey that Thomas Mueller of University of California in Pennsylvania had helped lead with me to try to understand what is the state of this field in our classrooms in higher education. And we presented that work at the HOT Summit, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Summit in Canada last year. That's available on our Wiki website, as well as some readings, some bibliographies that we compiled from that work, and some best practices that we took from asking all of you. I'm sure some of you replied, and if you did, thank you, for whether they incorporate it sort of as part of a course or a full straight up course. We do have a handful of syllabi. We are very keen on sort of creating a clearinghouse or repository for that. So if you have some that you would like to share, we really welcome that, so we can share with each other. One of the ones that I shared was my class at Texas Tech that I've done in Open Mapping for Resilience, which is completely dedicated to student working on teams with the YouthMappers projects. I wanted to mention that one of the advantages of not just using these syllabi, but maybe incorporating the network into the curriculum in ways that we were able to do at Texas Tech was really enriching for our students. We could connect, obviously, you see this multiple Skype session that we had with Italy and South Africa and Bangladesh and Colombia and Uganda. So it was wonderful to have all of those perspectives brought into the classroom. I think it teaches in a way that we can't do it alone. I've also been promoting a project-based learning approach, and I've done a little bit of research on this, on how the YouthMappers model follows that sort of project-based learning design, if any of you are familiar with that, and also how those things connect up with the standards, the geospatial competencies, and those learning assessments that we use to really give the heart of the content to our students. So if you're interested in that kind of work, we actually had our article recently released. It was published in the Research in Geographic Education journal, and you can get the article, the full article here with that typology that we created. So hopefully that's helpful for those of you thinking about either justifying in higher education or just the methods on how to, and some other ideas for research. We're looking at everything again from what tools and how you integrate this in the classroom. George Washington University again being probably the pioneer in this, about gender, about project-based learning, about assessments, about how students learn, but also on making the maps, the viability of this whole enterprise for doing this applied work. How can we use it in these vulnerability analysis? What is the impact in the development world? What kinds of decisions? Do they trust the data? How much are they uptaking the data into that decision-making process? How good is the quality of the data? Do our students do as good or better or worse than the average volunteer? What can we do to make that better? And all sorts of applied work, like on the agricultural end with the food security, the conservation issues, the dams and infrastructure, malaria health outcomes, all of those kinds of things are actively being pursued by our network of faculty, and hopefully we get the chance to bring that to improve how YouthMappers operates in the first place. So I just want to sum this up by saying that there's lots and lots of opportunities. We see YouthMappers as a place where students can actually belong in that world of humanitarian development, open geospatial mapping. At the same time, they gain skills that they can broaden their knowledge of other places around the world. They're doing this in a context that is very service learning oriented, and I think really gives them new perspectives on what it means to be a citizen and a citizen scientist in a way that connects them with their peers throughout the world. Anecdotally, we're looking at this, but anecdotally I really see such a change in our students trying to more deeply understand development and their own role in the world and how they can use open mapping to do that and accomplish that. However, it's not all easy, and we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us still that we're working on. We don't have all of the answers. We're looking forward to keep learning more and hearing from more and more collaborators, but it really is a challenge to maintain that level of quality that we know we need to have when we have a lot of quantity that we also need, but we have volunteers that are from everything from geography to education to maybe disaster planning to, you name it, environmental sciences. We have a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different experience levels in the network. Some people are starting out, some people are much more experienced, as well as being all around the world in 30 different countries. So this is a really an interesting challenge that we're always trying to find ways to do this better. The workflows that we use with USAID to try to make sure that the pace of academia is working at the same pace as the humanitarian world, which is not always in sync. Sometimes there's some serious urgencies that happen during exam week. So developing those methods and the workflow so that we can smoothly make all of this work together and analyze it is something we're also challenged in dealing with. From an educator's standpoint, I think it's still challenging to try to offer those really meaningful learning experiences while we're at a distance, and to do it in a way that does not reproduce the same colonial histories, that does not reproduce the same biases of gender, that we're more inclusive, and underscore that kind of ethic that we have for open and inclusive of everyone. That is difficult to do, but we're conscious about finding ways to do it. And then again, it's just been a wonderful journey so far in the last couple of years, but it is a challenge to keep sustaining this, and our funding will not last forever. We're still seeking other ways to continue, but also to continue to engage our students, continue to engage them after they graduate, sort of through an alumni network, and just sort of grow and evolve with all of this. But we invite you to look at it and see if this is for you and if you want to participate. It's very easy. You can just go to our website at youthmappers.org/participate. You can see there how it works. If you have a student group on your campus already, you can just affiliate that group and just join as a chapter affiliate. If you need a new group, like at Texas Tech, they wanted to make it multidisciplinary, so we had students from many different colleges join together to create a new group. That's another way to do it. There's no specific discipline that we ask for. We do ask that there's only one chapter per campus. And also we have some resources for you to look at if you want to create a constitution or see some governance structure that some of our chapters have created in the past. Or we can put students in contact with other chapter leaders so that they can talk about what some of the opportunities are for how they can create their groups or activate their groups. So it's really pretty easy. Then you just fill out this form. We make sure that every chapter has a faculty advisor. You do need one on most campuses anyway to have a student group affiliated with your campus. But for us, it's also really important the role that faculty mentors play in sustaining and engaging and keeping our students on track and really learning and engaged in the network. So that's all there is to it. I'm very happy to take any questions or any thoughts or any ideas. And I see that, yeah.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you very much for that. That was very, very interesting. I think we have one in the chat. I believe it was a comment.
Okay.
It says, do your students' chapters tend to be focused around geography/GIS majors, or is there a lot of interdisciplinary involvement there?
Yes. The majority of our chapters are something related to geography and GIS. And I say that broadly, too, because maybe the department that is housing the chapter is environmental sciences or geospatial sciences. There's a lot of that. It's definitely predominantly in that field, but it is open to everyone. And we have seen a lot of chapters that are kind of coming from a different location. Like we have one chapter in the US that is from disaster management program. We also have one in Nepal, actually, is a disaster management program. We have one in Rwanda that is biology. So there is an interdisciplinary involvement, I think, across the set of chapters, but also within our campuses. Again, there's only one chapter per university, and that's purposely to make sure that it's inclusive. And on our own campus at Texas Tech University, for example, I've had students from the College of Education, from engineering, actually a lot of civil engineering, from our wind energy program, from law. It really is kind of all over. And I think it's because the entry level is such that you can do this remote mapping and the mapathons at a very elementary stage. You can actually teach in the course of an evening in the mapathons, you can teach new mappers how to trace the buildings and at least get involved in that way. And it attracts a lot of attention because they get to learn a new technology. But on the other hand, there's really kind of also this deep involvement that you can do through it. Our students who tend to do that and the more research, they're definitely more in the geosciences and the engineering kinds of fields when they get more technology. Also computer science, by the way. So is there a way to participate if you do not have a full university chapter affiliation? Right now, we don't have a mechanism for other ways of participating. We actually are kind of organized around our student chapters. But we do welcome using the resources that we put together. And also if you have maybe in your classroom, if you've used open mapping, if you can help us with syllabi, if you can help us with, thoughts on that, that's absolutely welcomed. We do have a couple of places in the US who are sort of hovering around creating a chapter, but they haven't really, they're mostly graduate students, so they're actually a little afraid to work with a student organization because it might take a little bit of time away from the dissertation kind of effort. But certainly we're working with them on looking at some of the research that they want to do around some of the data that we create. So those kinds of things are always a possibility. You can talk with me if you have a specific idea. But for the most part, for the students to get involved, it really is important to kind of create that social net, and it sustains that kind of engagement, and also kind of levels out some of the technology needs. Since we can't really be everywhere all the time, that kind of group is really important for us.
Great. I think you can see the chat, right? So you can.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and just.
I see that. Thank you, Sushi. That there's a lot of opportunities to work together for expanding collaborations, providing geoeducation opportunities for all. I agree, 100%. This is one of the reasons why I was really interested in the invitation for this webinar, because I feel like there's a very strong academic role that we can play, both contributing to and receiving from this kind of activity. And UCGIS actually is also another consortium that we have a relationship with. They're helping us with our internships as well. And I'd love to find ways to join forces and synergize more. I know there's a whole lot of like app development that goes on that we could definitely benefit from, our chapters could benefit from, and we could talk about ways to really leverage that network and those intellectual resources.
Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. I fully agree. And what I will, in your presentation, get me thinking a lot of different ideas. So I will later email you with some of the things we can work on, and especially, projects for developing apps, as you just mentioned, and different tools basically. And especially if it is free and open tools, then everybody can reuse it as they wish, make it into different languages. And I'm particularly interested in developing countries and poorer countries and students from those regions. So I was very happy to see a lot of examples you touched on from Panama to lot of different kind of countries who traditionally, I come from India, and I know the difficulties we faced, when I was a student, I didn't get these opportunities. So I'm so happy to see, these kind of opportunities these students now they are getting. So, but again, I see, it's just a tip of the, what we want to do, because so many universities in the developing world still don't have access as we wish. And the only way we can expand it very fast is by fully making that open philosophy in everything. Yes. So they are not dependent on any vendor or anybody, because vendors are might change their conditions in 2 years time, 3 years time, and then we feel a lot of disappointment of the people who actually contributed, because they see all the efforts being wasted. So it's very fundamental to make sure we have that whole open education, open philosophy in mind, to make sure these initiatives, like the fantastic initiative you have done, is there forever. It keeps on in different forms. Even the funding ends, it doesn't matter, because it will evolve in another form if it's on open philosophy, because that's what I always found. All these, from Wikipedia to all these fully open initiatives, if it is one part is closed, then there's a lot of bottlenecks later. But if it is fully open, it somehow keeps evolving. That's the power of the openness. It is not the, so don't worry about the funding, part of it, because I'm pretty confident, because, once you build on full open principles, it just, from my small experience, we didn't have any funding at all to start with, so it's just the whole open philosophy, when people come together, and it's for something for everyone, fully for everyone. It's not for one organization or one person, or it's, with that philosophy, if you come in mind, it just, it's amazing how from I don't know how it happens, but it just happens, because it's the some force which bigger than all of us, which sustains it in a way which one person can't do it. So I am really hoping that your initiative will expand, and we are very happy to support it in whatever way we can. Because now there are a lot of Fuji events happening around the world, and we can spread it like anything, and we can make sure students not only have the data, that they have the full tools, and they become startups. What I really hope is they create their own startups in these countries, and they create all these kind of innovative opportunities. And the only way we can do it is to make sure they have the fully open tools, so they are not dependent on any vendor, because that way they are fully empowered. They don't have to pay any licenses or anything, or they have full freedom to create their own destinies. And so we are very happy to work with you, Patricia, and all your colleagues, to provide you all the software tools as well, for you to make sure you are not dependent on, you have the flexibility to expand it as you wish.
Thank you so much. That's very encouraging. I really appreciate your words. Yeah, that's something that too, I think even just that philosophy, and us being able to bring that philosophy to many of these students that maybe not have even heard of open mapping before, or some OpenStreetMap. A lot of times, well, especially in the US, in more resourced universities, they do have access to proprietary tools, and they may not even understand that there's this whole other world out there. And I know that that's opened up a lot of eyes and a lot of minds to what really exists in the possibility. They might want to work in a humanitarian scene, and they won't be able to actually afford the tools or the entrepreneurial thing. And we have really seen that in one of our students, our fellows, Temadayo, who is in Nigeria, is at the Federal University of Technology of Akure in Nigeria. He's just done amazing things and built apps and built stuff around an effort to map illegal waste dumping in his city. And so just the amount of creativity that they have, their prospects for the future, their careers, I think even just being aware of it and having some experience with it is tremendous. So I'm very encouraged. They inspire us all the time. In fact, we've had a couple of maybe 3 or 4 cases where students actually have graduated. They maybe joined us at the beginning, and they were late in their stages of undergraduate, and then they went to another school, another university for graduate school, and they started another chapter there. So what you say about this sort of catching fire is really true. And believe it or not, with the 100 chapters that we have not done hardly any recruitment whatsoever. It's really like, I like to think of it as, in chemistry, where you have that super saturated solution, and then you have the catalyst in there. It just crystallizes around that idea. And it's really the energy of the young people that we're tapping into here. And I hope that endures forever.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely see that, especially, something like this for education and for the wider benefit of the global community. It will make sure, people will, students, especially students. I'm always inspired by the students, because I always, because I'm not a digital native. I learned computers all later, but my students, when I see all these students, even when I travel from India to Brazil to US to everywhere, I always find them so much advanced than me in their thinking, and they're all, what I find is they're all global citizens in a way, because, they know more about the world than I knew when I was a child, when I was their age. I didn't know anything about the world, but these students, because they have the internet, and they have been learning a lot of ideas from, they are globally connected citizens. So they have much better thinking of the whole open philosophy. And this is fundamental from, when I think about the next generation of the whole, this kind of, the philosophy of them being global citizens, that's then them contributing really to something which is benefiting for all, is very, very powerful.
And I don't know that I explicitly said this, but I alluded to this value of that peer connection and really getting some deep, meaningful connections that we've seen happen. Like our students in Nepal are so advanced, and they're so proud, and they're wonderful, and they are, they're very happy to be able to teach our students in Texas, for example. They know more than our students in Texas. And so it sort of flips this idea of who has the knowledge and who really knows in the world, right? That we sometimes see. And just, even opening the minds of students when we have a context in the world right now where there's some forces that would like to fight against the idea of global citizens, and they want to create borders and stop that kind of thing from happening. And I think that having that individual connection is really, really important. I've seen it happen with my students that they maybe never have traveled out of the state, but they're mapping the refugees, the Sudanese refugees in Uganda, and all of a sudden what they're seeing on the news just makes a lot of sense. They're speaking with our students in Uganda and they're thinking, wow, I understand what's going on, and they're more curious about the world. So I think things like this is my dream for students to understand more than just the technology and more than what they can do it personally, but that truly it helps contribute in little small ways to that global understanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Patricia.
Great. So if you want to create a chapter, then please you can email me directly, but just check out the website, because we've tried to make it very easy. And any questions, don't hesitate to ask us. I have a very capable research associate named Marcela Zabayos, who handles a tremendous amount of correspondence, and she's very fast getting back to people as well. So we're really pleased to have her, and we're really happy to speak with anybody about questions or help talk to your students and get them excited about it. So, and thank you so much, Rafael, for the invitation. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody and have this out there for people to learn more about us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we have still a few minutes and more questions.
Okay. Oh, we do have more questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let me see. We have Suchi. And
the public.
Glad to be part of such an inspiring talk. Could you read it out loud and then you'll say?
Okay. Glad to be part of such an inspiring talk. I have a question regarding adoption of the open technology by the public. Is that also the focus? Maybe I missed it. If you can, please briefly help me with that. It would be great. Okay. We do promote the creation and use of open data. That's where we start, the open data. But we use an open technology, the open platform, OpenStreetMap. From that, there's all sorts of other apps and technologies that we have our students, we promote that first and foremost. But you get into that world and you start using things like open aerial map or open what is the one that the open data kit, those kinds of things. It's just a very short leap to all these other open tools and technologies. So that's kind of where that space happens. So we don't tell students what they should use, except for starting with OpenStreetMap, because we have these campaigns. But we do promote that they look at these other tools and technologies and think about how they can add value to that data, how they can maybe go collect attribute data. We have some resources on QGIS, and because that is a very easy way to bring in OpenStreetMap data. And so those kinds of things, our researchers at George Washington University actually are also really skilled at those kinds of connections. And so we offer that as opportunities for learning about that. Obviously, when we support our research fellowships, we do pick students who are going to be creating and using open data and open tools. So, but the real focus is not, open technology is certainly part of it, but the real focus is on that open data for the humanitarian and development purpose. That's where we start.
Can you
Does
guys
that
hear me?
answer you? Yeah.
Yeah. So like I'm working with the project for the last 3 years, which is about developing an open toolkit, something like that kind of thing. So the project is called Open Smart City, which uses open data. So I'm like using open street maps, open sources, and all these kinds of tools. But one of the questions which is tried, for example, let's say we develop a tool and student develops a tool, but when they don't see these things used in real life, for example, let's talk in terms of open smart city. If citizens are not using it, there's no point of developing certain tools. So my question was, are there certain, let's say, guidelines or some support also to make a bridge between how public use done? So the ecosystem of like, then we don't have to push more of the chapters, because then first when people start using it, the developers start creating it. And then in that case, we have a benefit for both. The open data is used and also created at a higher speed, because then community can also start participating in giving us data by using sensors, and we can use open data for giving them applications what they want to. So my question was in terms of harvesting this knowledge from the students to the public, and is there something like that working or not?
I think in pieces. There are some students, and some local chapters are doing better than others. Like I mentioned to you, the Pretoria, University of Pretoria chapter, they're heavily involved in that kind of thing, and they actually do have those tools that they're using with the public in that study area that I told you about. It's called Alaska, the informal settlement. So yeah, there's some. And again, like I said, one of the tensions that we have is like in being all-inclusive and also trying to make as meaningful of work as possible. So some of our chapters just don't even have very good internet access. So that's a real challenge, So some of our students are much more able to work in that kind of realm and get connected with their communities. They have maybe some of the resources. But I can say to you that we do have that ethic. We have an ethics statement that we have for the network, and our leaders in Nepal, our leadership helped us finalize that. And it really has that kind of an ethic that working with the community is really important, to be engaged as well as open. So
nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I believe
Okay.
there was one more. Do you see? I have to leave to class.
Yeah, I didn't see a question in there.
No, I was just thanking you for the presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
So, perfect. I just have a quick one.
Okay.
Do you have plans to put together like a how-to manual? Like, if I want to learn or do something or join or do things, is there like a PDF that takes me step by step and tells me this is what you got to do, 1, 2, 3? Do you think that might be useful to move things forward faster?
Yeah, and first of all, I don't know how much faster I could go, to be honest with you, because it's pretty overwhelming. One new chapter a week has been completely. I don't get much sleep. But yes, we do have something like that on our website. We don't have it as a PDF. It's one of the pages on our website that it's called Onboarding, which doesn't so much create any new materials as it kind of helps you navigate through where to start and where to look first. So it kind of helps the chapters understand what do you do first. We are, I showed you a couple pages from our wiki. We haven't finished that, and that actually has some sections of it where students need resources, not only just to learn how to map and get started in that field, but also in the actual leadership question of how to start their group and how to engage their group. What are best practices for getting them together? How many people do you need to have on your organizing committee? And just that social kind of thing. So we do have those things available, and the wiki is going to be a little bit more detailed in some of that. But for now, we really just have the onboarding webpage on how to get started. It's a real challenge. Again, I mean, I can talk about this for hours and hours, and the amount of information that we could exchange with the chapters is also seems endless, to be honest with you. So it's really hard to encapsulate that in a sort of a one-page thing. But I think through our website, we're trying to get to that point where it's very clear on how you get started and where you can take it.
Yeah.
This video is going to also help us. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I think I'm excited about that. Hopefully, this is going to inspire a lot of people. So I think we are. Those are all the questions, and we are close to the time. And we want to thank you for this awesome presentation and for your very important and valuable work. And we're looking forward to see your success keeping and going and hopefully join it in some way.
Thank you so much. And thank you all too for your work as well. Can't wait to see what ideas you have.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Recording. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We will post again the recording with the slides in the website and the YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a nice weekend.